Dear colleagues, I welcome you. Let me introduce my report named The Fuzzy Model for Sectoral Resilience Analysis. My group has been dealing with the topic of resilience of economic systems for quite a long time, 10 years. But basically, these studies were devoted to the issues of resilience of individual enterprises. Now, we are gradually reaching the industry level. Today, the Russian economy, as a part of global economy, is suffering the circumstances of shift from the globalization economic model to the model of the regional economic zones, which is going to be established within upcoming 10 years, we expect. This situation is accompanied by serious political contradictions in the geopolitical systems, and as well by rising confrontation between the countries and states which are aiming to implement independent political approach like Russia and the countries of the core of outgoing global architecture model, the global West. Due to that, the liberal economic model, which had previously dominated the economic mainstream, is becoming untenable under the circumstances of political and economical pressure we are facing with. Today, we should talk about a new economic policy within the framework of public-private mobilization partnership. And the basis of such a partnership is approached to establishment of the concrete base to sovereign and sustainable development of the Russian economy within the circumstances of the outer political and economical pressure. So, the new requirements to the resilience of enterprises and industries in such a circumstances are considered by. While resilience itself is defined as the ability of enterprises and industries to perform their economical mobilization tasks under the influence of uncertainty associated to the mentioned circumstances. Our approach to conduct the research is based on the presentation of enterprise or industry as a cybernetic system. Moreover, the adverse impact itself, the economic object, and the totality of decisions can all be considered as separate subsystem within a complex system, a system of systems. A little later, I will mention that the ideal framework for subsystems modeling is a 4x6 matrix, which we have developed in detail. The peculiarity of a cybernetic system is that it must fulfill the target tasks assigned to it, and it at the same time observe homeostasis, that is, to seek balance with the external environment. Unfavorable influence brings the system out of equilibrium, and it must return to it at the expenses of its own reserves and through decisions made by the controlling subsystem. So-called negative control feedback are included, adequate to the scale of the adverse impact. A systematic response to this impact is born. The industry consists of backbone enterprises, each of which can be assessed in terms of its resilience. Initially, it is possible to make an express assessment of the enterprise by key factors arranged in a tree hierarchy using the technology of a matrix aggregate calculator, MAC, which we described in our earlier works. At the output of the technology, we have a resilience index, RI, mentioned from 0.1, very low level, to 0.9, very high level. At the same time, profitability, turnover, cost of capital, and labor productivity are analyzed. The MAC model is an analog of the simplest two-layer neural network, which has already been trained by experts on the example of a wide range of enterprises considered in the period of 8 to 10 years of the operation. It is important to note that all indicators of the enterprise model should receive their industry standards in terms of resilience. One of these standards is the resilience lens, so-called R lens. The figure shows a lens in the coordinates resilience, return on equity for the oil and gas industry. The lens itself is a fuzzy parabolic regression, and the points correspond to the industry enterprises in the different years of the observation. If the points is within the lens, the enterprise should be considered as remaining stable. Here we see that a lot of points have gone beyond the lens. This is a result of the impact on the industry of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. When resilience is assessed for all key enterprises in the industry, it is possible to obtain similar estimates already at the level of industries and build industry indexes in the form of triangular fuzzy numbers and series. Here in the table there are 14 industry indexes for the international oil and gas sector. The corresponding estimates were obtained over 8 years of research, and the industry group consisted of the 20 largest enterprises in the industry. The resultant indexes can act as a starting forecast for the coming year. They include the industry's response to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. All negative indexes estimates are from this period. On the contrary, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine gave a new positive impact on the international oil and gas sector. Due to the redistribution of oil and gas flows to Europe from Russia and the United States, basically we are talking about a multiple increase in the supply of LNG. This new military positive, if such a formula is appropriate, reflected positively in sectoral indexes. The industry have never felt so good in the entire observation period. And now, when we have received the sectoral indexes, we can feed it into the matrix model. Here, the roles of matrix are the strategic perspectives, resources, processes, relationships and effects, and the columns are strategic map, threats, occasions, BSC, risks, chances and decisions. At the intersection of rows and columns, the sectoral indexes and indicators adjusted to them, in the form of fuzzy series and linguistic variables. Since the matrix model is dynamic, one time point in the model is 1 year. All model factors are interconnected by fuzzy logical connections. Thus, the matrix model is completely fuzzy and is based on the knowledge. We have already gained some experience in applying our model in the coal industry in Russia, and on its basis the corresponding state standard has been formed. Link to the document is represented. So minor geological disturbances acted as adverse impact on the coal mines, methane explosions, fire, rock collapse, etc. The success management in such conditions has to work proactively. If we understand that there is an inevitable accumulation of damage, we must take preventive measures and increase safety. At the same time as economic resilience, by analogy, if there is a war situation, it's necessary to rebuild the economy on the war footing. If we talk about Russia, we already had some experience in Stalin time of mobilization. This extensive path will not suit to us because Russia does not simply access human resources for mobilization in Stalinist type. We must follow a different path, and this path must be intensive. Reliance here must be placed on business, on its craving for survival, and the mechanism for managing sectoral resilience must be different. Accordingly, the efficiency of the industry falls in the conditions of war, as in the case of the oil and gas sector of the Russian Federation. Then the industry needs state support. Appropriate solution can be designed and modeled. The control parameters of these decisions are applied to the exogenous input of the cybernetic model, system model, and this allows the industry to stay afloat and restore resilience. If we're talking about a new defense type industry policy, a branch is a ship, and the cybernetics, or in its original Greek meaning, is the act of steering a ship. So, if we are in Greece, it's time to recall Antique. Accordingly, we learn to control an industry ship in a storm, accumulate the relevant knowledge, and to reproduce it in the model level. To date, we have compiled models for the last 6 most significant international industry sectors, in which Russian segments are signed out separately. All industry indexes went through the procedure of linguistic normalization, and all these initial data were included in the matrix industry model. The modeling approach presented here is very similar to old forestry industrial model obtained 60 years ago. However, our models are more sophisticated and they contain elements of artificial intelligence. And these are discrete models because the time in the model is discrete. In addition, Forster did not model external influence on the systems. So, that's all for me. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you very much.